They said it would be glamorous, a revolution in lip color, a bold shimmer that promised confidence in every swipe. But the first time Bahua pressed that metallic lip powder to her mouth, it didn't feel like empowerment. It felt like betrayal. The glitter didn't glide, it sank into every fine line. The promise of radiance became a cruel mirror, magnifying every crease on her aging skin. That moment, standing in front of the mirror with hope melting into disappointment, wasn't just about makeup, it was about something deeper. Something we don't talk about enough. What happens when beauty trends forget to include the beauty of aging? Today, we invite you to join us on a journey that begins with one woman's honest experience and unfolds into a powerful truth that every older viewer deserves to hear. They sold it like magic, the latest trend on every beauty magazine cover and glowing across the faces of celebrities half a century younger. Metallic lip powder. Illuminate your smile. Shine like never before. That's what the advertisement said. That's what the glossy posters promised. But behind the shimmer, behind the dazzle, lay a silent truth no one cared to whisper to those who had lived long enough to know that beauty is not always found in sparkle. For someone in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, the reality of applying metallic lip powder could feel less like a transformation and more like betrayal. You see, the skin of youth is like silk smooth, taut, responsive. It embraces pigment and glows under light. But aging skin tells a different story. It carries every laugh, every sorrow, every sleepless night, every winter wind. And while that story is beautiful, metallic lip powder wasn't designed to tell it. Instead, it exposes it, accentuates it, turns every fine line into a silver scar, every fold into a reflective crack. Imagine an elderly woman named Hoa, 73 years old, living in the quiet suburbs of Dalart. For her granddaughter's wedding, she wanted to look special, radiant, as if time had not dimmed her soul or dulled her warmth. So she bought the same metallic lip powder she'd seen her granddaughter use on TikTok, sparkling rose gold, bold and promising. But as she applied it, her lips felt dry. The powder settled into the creases she had never noticed before, and instead of a youthful glow, the mirror reflected a look that startled even her. Not because she looked older, no, she had always worn her age with pride, but because the product, designed for youthful skin, had no compassion for experience, no understanding of the grace etched into the lips of the elderly. That shimmer she hoped would uplift her, betrayed her instead, highlighting textures and shadows that weren't visible with her usual soft balm. She wiped it off with a shaking hand, her chest tight, not from the product, but from a realization. Not every beauty trend is meant for everyone, and not every shine is kind. This isn't just about lipstick. It's about a silent pressure many elderly people feel the need to keep up, to not be left behind by a world obsessed with eternal youth, to look fresh and relevant in an era that rarely features gray hair in a glamorous light. And so, the shelves of cosmetics overflow with products made for skin that hasn't yet lived, while those with decades of life behind them must squint to find a single tube that embraces their texture, their warmth, their dignity. The marketing world doesn't tell you this. They rarely test these products on older skin, rarely include elderly models in their promotional shoots, and rarely warn that metallic textures cling to folds and accentuate dryness. Instead, they keep selling the dream, a dream that, for the elderly, can quickly turn into a nightmare. Scientific truth supports this heartbreak. As we age, the skin naturally loses collagen and elastin, two proteins that keep it plump, firm, and smooth. The lips thin, and the skin around the mouth becomes more delicate. Pigments, especially those with shimmer or metallic finish, are notoriously less forgiving on such skin. They can slip into lines, reflect unevenly, and create a cracked, aged effect rather than a polished one. Metallic powders, in particular, lack the emollients needed for mature skin, offering no hydration, no flexibility, only glitter resting on a fragile surface. For someone struggling with dry lips, common in the elderly due to medication or weather, the effect can be visually harsh and physically uncomfortable. And yet, elderly women and men too are not immune to the desire to feel beautiful. That desire doesn't fade with age. In fact, it often grows deeper, more nuanced. Having raised families, worked hard, endured losses, and celebrated triumphs, many seniors seek not to look younger, but to look alive, to glow with the light of vitality, not artifice. But instead of embracing that noble pursuit, many are lured into the traps of youth-driven marketing, where shimmer promises magic but delivers mockery when it meets reality. Let's not forget the emotional cost. When someone in their 70s applies a product only to find it emphasizes every insecurity, it doesn't just affect appearance, it affects self-worth. Perhaps they'll avoid mirrors for the rest of the day. Perhaps they'll hesitate before joining a social event. Perhaps a single poor experience with a badly chosen product erodes the fragile confidence they'd spent years rebuilding after retirement, illness, or widowhood. All because no one warned them that not every trend is built for every skin. But the blame doesn't fall on the elderly for wanting to experiment, to enjoy beauty. It falls on an industry that doesn't consider them. It falls on influencers who fail to provide alternatives for diverse skin types. It falls on our society's inability to celebrate aging with the same passion that it celebrates youth. What if, instead of pushing metallic lip powders, brands focused on soft satin textures, rich balms, and moisture-locking formulas designed for lips that have kissed grandchildren goodnight and whispered prayers into the dark? What if we had spokespeople in their 70s modeling products made for them, showing that beauty after 60 is not only possible but powerful? There's a quiet revolution waiting, one that reclaims dignity in appearance, that honors the complexity of aging skin without trying to cover it up or outshine it. A revolution where makeup becomes an ally to aging, not an adversary. Until then, stories like Bahoa's will continue, stories of good intentions met with bad outcomes, of shimmer that steals confidence, of glamour that fails to understand the soul it seeks to decorate. So, to those who are older and watching this, remember this truth: you don't need sparkle to shine. You already carry light in your wisdom, in your laughter, in the way you've survived storms no lipstick could ever know. Let beauty serve you, not betray you. Let the world adjust to your elegance, not the other way around. And if ever you feel tempted by a shimmering powder, let this story be your mirror, a mirror that reflects not flaws, but the strength of knowing what truly suits you. It wasn't just the shimmer on her lips that left Bahua feeling betrayed. It was the moment she realized her body had changed in ways she hadn't yet fully understood or accepted. That silent shift in how her skin felt under her fingertips, how her lips no longer bounced back with the same softness as they once did, how makeup that once enhanced now seemed to accuse all of it, came crashing down in that one cold reflection. Aging, she thought, wasn't something that happened overnight. It had been happening quietly, steadily, like rain dripping in the attic, barely audible but eventually warping the ceiling. And now, standing in front of the mirror, she saw the watermarks of time all too clearly. Her lips, once plump and lined with laughter, now carried the stillness of years. The skin around her mouth, once smooth and unthinking, now required negotiation, moisturizers, gentle exfoliants, more delicate handling than ever before. The body is a diary, but most of us don't read the entries until the ink begins to fade. The collagen that once gave her lips their pillow-like softness has slowly retreated, a process invisible in the moment but undeniable in hindsight. Her skin, once so forgiving to experimentation, now responded with resistance. It flaked under powders, it cracked under dryness, it curled under stress. And while these were all natural signs of aging, no one had taught her how to care for them. No daughter had sat her down and explained that, with time, skincare needed to become as deliberate as prayer. No magazine article warned her that metallic finishes would not glide but catch, would not smooth but reveal. She was left to learn the hard way, one mistake at a time. Worse, she began to notice how many of her friends were going through the same silent confusion. Her neighbor, Balan, had tried a matte lipstick last week, thinking a bolder color would lift her spirits. But by the afternoon, her lips had cracked so badly they bled. Another friend, Back Hong, once known for her youthful glow, had tried a trendy setting powder and ended up with a face that looked like chalk had been rubbed into every crease. These were not just cosmetic mishaps. They were small heartbreaks. Each failure chipped away at their willingness to try again. What they lacked was not enthusiasm, but information the kind that treats aging not as a flaw to erase, but as a stage to understand. Let us stop pretending that beauty routines can be the same at 70 as they were at 30. The architecture of the face changes, the skin thins, the sebaceous glands slow down, reducing natural moisture. This is why so many elderly individuals experience chronic dryness, especially around the mouth and eyes. Even the shape of the lips alters, the vermilion border fades, the cupid's bow softens, and vertical lines begin to appear. These are not defects. They are signatures of life, lived, love, spoken, grief, whispered through clenched lips. And yet, no beauty counter in any department store seemed prepared to address these truths. No salesperson offered solutions for mature lips. The anti-aging aisle overflowed with empty promises, not practical understanding. And so, Miss Hoa began to wonder, what if she stopped chasing what wasn't made for her and started learning what was? She put away the glittery powders, the heavy liners, the drying lip paints. Instead, she went searching not for youth, but for respect. She started reading about emollients, about balms that restored hydration rather than stealing it. She discovered that certain oils, like jojoba and rosehip, mimicked the skin's natural sebum and could protect her delicate lip barrier. She learned about humectants like hyaluronic acid, which drew moisture into her skin rather than pushing it out. These were not trendy TikTok topics, they were whispers of wisdom, buried under the noise of modern marketing. More than that, she began to treat her face like a garden, not a battlefield. Each morning, instead of attacking her skin with brushes and powders, she nurtured it, a warm compress to awaken the pores, a gentle serum to replenish what time had taken. And when it came to her lips, she no longer reached for shimmer, she reached for comfort, tinted balms that softened, creamy satin lipsticks in shades that honored her complexion without screaming for attention. And the transformation wasn't just skin deep. Slowly, the woman who had once flinched at her own reflection began to smile again, not because she looked younger, but because she looked cared for. This realization began to ripple through her circle of friends. They started having long afternoon talks over tea, not about which brand was on sale, but which ingredients worked for dry skin, which natural masks left their faces supple. They swapped not just products, but wisdom. They became each other's mirror, reflecting encouragement rather than critique. One friend even joked, "We're not fighting wrinkles, we're learning their language." And it was true. For once, the lines on their faces weren't being punished. They were being understood. You see, aging skin isn't broken. It's just different. It requires gentleness, attention, nourishment, and in a world that constantly demands speed, shock value, and sparkle, taking time to care for aging skin is an act of rebellion, a powerful, beautiful one. It says, I am still here. I still matter. My skin, my face, my body, they deserve not just function but affection, and no metallic powder can give that. Only knowledge, patience, and love can. So to every elderly viewer who has ever felt disheartened by a disappointing makeup attempt, know this: the issue was never you. It was the world's failure to prepare you, to guide you, to offer you the tools and tenderness your skin now needs. But that can change today, even now. Begin by asking not, what makes me look younger, but what makes my skin feel respected? That's the question that leads to healing, to confidence, to beauty that doesn't scream, it glows. And in that glow, Baha'u'llah found her peace. Her lips no longer chased metallic illusions, they embraced balms that kissed them back. Her skin, once misunderstood by modern trends, now radiated with the quiet dignity of someone who had finally made peace with her reflection. And perhaps that's the real beauty secret, not a powder, not a pigment, but the power of knowing your body, listening to its changes, and responding with care instead of shame. Because when beauty is rooted in understanding, it never fades. It only evolves. As the days passed and the balm of understanding softened both her lips and her heart, Baha'u'llah began to see beauty not as something to conquer, but something to converse with. She no longer flipped through beauty magazines with envy, but with clarity, recognizing the quiet difference between aspiration and authenticity. What once looked like radiance now looked like performance. What once seemed elegant now felt excessive. And somewhere between those pages, under the glittery smiles of models half her age, she realized something fundamental. True beauty, especially in old age, is not about fitting in, it is about standing firm. Not about chasing trends, but about honoring what still feels like you. There had been a time when she, like many others, believed the right lipstick could turn back time. A certain eyeshadow might lift the years. A new foundation could paint over grief, loneliness, even the passing of a loved one. But she now saw these illusions for what they were: not evil, but empty. And more dangerously, they were distractions. They pulled attention away from the real work of aging gracefully. Self-respect, nourishment, patience, and the ability to know when to say no. No to colors that clash with her tone. No to techniques that tug at fragile skin. No to the lie that youth equals worth. Because she finally understood that chasing trends was like trying to catch the wind. You exhaust yourself. And in the end, you still feel cold. This lesson didn't come easily. She had to peel away layers of advertising, years of insecurity, and moments of embarrassment. Like the time she attended her friend's birthday party wearing a bold contour look she'd seen on YouTube. She had thought it would sharpen her features, define her aging cheekbones, but instead, it made her look drawn and harsh, like a shadow of herself. Younger guests politely smiled, but their eyes flickered with confusion. Her close friend, gently and lovingly, pulled her aside and said, "Hoa, your face doesn't need angles. It needs light." It stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. From that day on, she made a promise. No more borrowing beauty from others. She would create her own. And that's when she began exploring colors and textures that complemented her natural tone-warm apricots, deep berries, soft pinks with a touch of earth. She favored cream formulas over powders. She used highlighters with a dewy finish rather than metallics that sat like armor. She learned how less was not just more, it was kinder. She wore makeup like she wore pearls, sparingly, elegantly, only to enhance, never to hide. When asked by her granddaughter why she no longer tried new trends, she smiled and replied, "Because I'm not new. I'm timeless." But Bahoa's journey wasn't just personal. It grew into a gentle crusade. In her community center, she began hosting small afternoon tea gatherings, not to gossip, but to talk about beauty for the aged. The room, usually silent during the week, came alive with conversation. Women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s opened up. Some admitted they hadn't worn lipstick in years because everything made them look worse. Others shared their confusion at makeup counters where no one seemed to know what to recommend for older skin. Together, they tested colors, shared favorite moisturizers, laughed at past blunders, and celebrated rediscovering joy in caring for themselves on their own terms. This wasn't about vanity. It was about visibility. For too long, society had made aging women feel invisible, that after a certain age, they were no longer allowed to shine. The screens stopped showing them, the ads ignored them, and the few products marketed to them were buried under layers of anti-aging slogans, as if wrinkles were an infection to be treated, not wisdom to be worn. Bahua and her friends decided to change that narrative. One balm, one blush, one story at a time. They created a small newsletter called Silver Radiance. It featured honest reviews of products suited for mature skin, tutorials that respected the fragility of aging hands and eyes, and interviews with local grandmothers sharing their beauty rituals. They rejected the word anti-aging altogether and replaced it with pro-aging, a term that embraced growth, depth, resilience. Their motto was simple: "We don't fight age, we walk with it." And their little group grew, first to 20 members, then 50. Then they were invited to share their insights at a local women's conference, where attendees applauded not just their knowledge, but their courage. One of the speakers at that conference, a retired schoolteacher named Batu, said something that stirred the entire room into silence. "We grew up being told what beauty is. Now we decide." And in that moment, every woman there felt seen, not through a filter, not through the lens of what was missing, but for what remained strong: their sense of self, their grace, their earned calm. And that became the core of everything they did, a refusal to be erased, a refusal to be told that sparkle meant value, a refusal to let trends dictate their worth. Baha'u'llah found herself smiling more, not just because she liked her reflection again, but because her reflection finally felt honest. There was no longer a war on her face, no foundation trying to erase history, no pigment trying to pretend away time. Just a woman, seasoned by years, choosing softness over sparkle, choosing comfort over clamor, and in doing so, she discovered that the real glow people noticed didn't come from a highlighter. It came from being at peace with who you are. As this movement of mindful beauty began spreading, something beautiful happened. Younger women began attending the tea circles, not to teach, but to listen. They asked questions, watched the older women apply gentle creams with reverence, and learned that beauty wasn't about contour lines and viral filters. It was about rituals, memory, and care. Some brought their mothers, others brought their grandmothers. And slowly, a bridge formed between generations, between expectations, between what beauty had been and what it could be again. And all of it began with a simple truth. Chasing trends is like chasing youth, both will run faster than you can. But walking with grace, with knowledge, with confidence in what suits you, that's a journey worth taking. That's a path paved not with glitter, but with gold. The gold of experience, of authenticity, of loving the skin you're in, not despite its years, but because of them. So let the young chase, let the magazines shout, let the influencers sparkle. For those who have weathered decades, survived storms, and danced through seasons, there is a richer kind of radiance, one that does not scream but sings, softly, surely, beautifully. But even with all the knowledge and newfound self-respect Baha'u'llah and her friends had gathered, there was still one truth: they couldn't escape the scars left behind by years of silent disappointment. They didn't always talk about it, not openly, but the wounds were there, invisible but sharp, tucked beneath soft scarves and polite smiles. And every now and then, in the quiet between their laughter, the pain would rise like steam from a teacup. Because what no one tells you is that the cost of a failed beauty experience, especially in old age, is never just skin deep. It cuts deeper, piercing through dignity, through memory, through the fragile layers of confidence one has worked a lifetime to build. Baha'u'llah remembered the moment it happened to her, long before she found her voice. It was her 68th birthday. Her daughter had taken her to a beauty salon as a surprise, a modern makeover she called it, something fresh and chic. Baha'u'llah had hesitated. She didn't like mirrors she couldn't control. But she went along, not wanting to seem ungrateful. The stylist was young, barely 25, her words fast and cheerful, her hands quicker than comfort allowed. She smeared a thick matte foundation over Baha'u'llah's face, then layered contour and bronzer, then the worst, a frosty metallic lip color that shimmered like foil. When the chair turned and Baha'u'llah faced the mirror, her breath caught. She didn't see herself. She saw a mask, heavy, lifeless, alien. She smiled, out of habit, but inside, something cracked. Later that night, she cried in the bathroom, wiping layer after layer off with tissues until the skin burned, not because the look was ugly, but because it wasn't hers. Because someone else's version of beauty had been pasted onto her face like wallpaper over an old sacred painting, and in that moment, she felt erased. Like the woman, she had been the woman with gentle eyes and lips that curved with stories, had been told she was not enough, that without glitter and lines and boldness, she could no longer be seen, and that ache is the unspoken cost of aging in a world that worships youth. Every time a product fails to match your skin tone, every time a shade makes your lips look parched and exhausted, every time a clerk at the counter suggests a product to hide those fine lines, it's another whisper in the wind saying, "You're not good enough anymore." And those whispers build, they become a storm inside. They make a woman hesitate before going to a wedding. They make a man avoid the mirror before a family gathering. They turn self-care into self-doubt. And in a stage of life where confidence is already fragile, where the body is changing, friends are passing, families are busy, these moments can feel like tiny betrayals that accumulate into grief. Grief for the skin you once had, grief for the comfort you once felt in your reflection, grief for the person who used to walk into a room without wondering if anyone noticed the creases near your eyes. That kind of grief doesn't make headlines. It's not loud, but it lives. It nestles itself into routines, into memories. It's in the drawer full of lipsticks you never use anymore. The eyeshadow palette your daughter bought you that you only open when no one's home. The perfume bottle that reminds you of the one man who always said you were beautiful and who isn't here to say it anymore. And yet, despite that grief, elderly people rarely speak up. They shrug it off, say, "I'm just too old for makeup now," or "These things aren't made for women like me." But behind those words is a buried wound, not a lack of desire, but a lack of belonging. A longing to still participate in the world of beauty without feeling humiliated or dismissed. Because beauty isn't about vanity, it's about identity. And when that is stolen by careless hands or thoughtless trends, it leaves behind a silence that screams. The emotional toll runs even deeper when failed beauty experiences are witnessed by others, especially by family. Baha'u'llah once confided in a friend that the worst part of that birthday makeover wasn't the makeup itself, but the way her grandson looked at her afterward. He was only 8, but his eyes blinked with confusion. "Grandma, why do your lips look so shiny? You look weird." He hadn't meant it cruelly. He was being honest, as children are. But those words lodged themselves in her chest like stones. That night, she took off the lipstick and whispered to herself, "Maybe I don't need to try anymore." And for a time, she didn't, because trying and failing had hurt more than not trying at all. It happens more often than people think. One wrong product, one careless comment, and a person retreats. They stop experimenting. They stop going to salons. They avoid makeup counters like battlefields. The damage isn't about ego, it's about emotional safety. And emotional safety becomes more precious with age. After all, when you've lived through decades of sacrifice, caregiving, and resilience, all you want is peace. All you want is to feel seen, not as a senior, not as a stereotype, but as a person whose reflection still matters. That's why Baha'u'llah's journey, and the journey of so many like her, isn't just about finding better lipstick. It's about healing, reclaiming ground that was lost, undoing the damage of 1,000 tiny rejections. And it's a process slow, delicate, brave. It begins with one moment of courage, trying again, picking up that balm, that mirror, that brush, not to chase youth, but to connect with self. To say, "I deserve to feel beautiful today." Not for others, not to impress, but because I matter. Because my face holds my history, and I want to honor it, not hide it. Through her tea circle, Baha'u'llah began to witness those moments in other women. One by one, they came back to themselves. One brought in an old lipstick she hadn't worn since her husband died, and with trembling hands, applied it while the group watched and cheered. Another, who had always worn powder to hide age spots, came one day with just moisturizer glowing, radiant, fearless. These were not beauty tips, they were victories. Little moments of reclaiming, of standing tall despite the pain of the past. Because in the end, failed beauty experiences are not just accidents, they are messages. Sometimes cruel, sometimes careless, that tell elderly people they are no longer part of the conversation. And the only way to fight back is to write new messages. To surround ourselves with voices that say, "Try again, gently, bravely, on your own terms." That is the healing balm we all need. Not a product, but a community. A space that doesn't erase the past, but forgives it, learns from it, grows beyond it. And perhaps that is the greatest kind of beauty there is. The kind that rises from disappointment, not in spite of it, but through it. The kind that looks in the mirror and sees, not a failed attempt, but a life story worthy of reverence. The kind that chooses softness over sorrow, warmth over shame. Because even after the shimmer fades and the powders settle, what remains is something far stronger than trends. The quiet, steady glow of someone who has survived every disappointment and still dares to shine. But healing doesn't stop with acknowledgement. Once the grief has been felt, once the disappointment has been spoken out loud in rooms filled with kind eyes and nodding heads, something shifts. The next step isn't to retreat, it's to rebuild. And for Bahoa and the growing circle of radiant silver women around her, that meant finding beauty solutions not designed to erase who they were, but to support who they had become. Because now, finally, they were no longer chasing illusions. They were reaching for tools of care, real, gentle, intentional tools that whispered, "You're not being fixed, you're being loved." This new chapter didn't begin in a mall or under fluorescent lights. It began at home, in front of humble mirrors, with aging fingers that no longer moved as quickly, but carried a tenderness no youth could match. It began with simplicity, the kind that understands less is more when the less is filled with thought. Instead of flashy palettes, Bahoa began stocking her vanity with moisture-rich balms, soft-tinted creams, and oils that honored the texture of her skin. Coconut oil for her lips, argan oil for her cheeks, a cooling aloe vera mist for the days Dalart's sun grew too sharp, and with each item she asked the same question. Does this feel like kindness? Because that was now the new standard. Not trendiness, not transformation, but kindness. Kindness in the ingredients, no alcohols that dried out her already thin skin, no parabens or harsh fragrances that triggered irritation. Kindness in the packaging, easy to open lids, pumps instead of twist tops, wide handles her fingers could grip. Kindness in the colors, soft corals, rosy neutrals, muted mauves that enhanced without demanding. She learned that satin and cream textures worked far better than anything labeled matte, that a touch of warm blush applied with the fingertips, not a brush, could revive a whole face, that using a brow pencil one shade lighter than her natural color gave shape without harshness. That shimmer had its place, not on the lips or eyelids, but in her eyes when she laughed freely. And this wasn't just theory, it was trial, error, discovery, celebration. Every item in her beauty drawer now had a story. The lip balm that soothed her mouth after a dry winter night. The tinted moisturizer that made her feel put together without feeling masked. The blush that her granddaughter said made her look extra smiley. These were not miracle products. They were tools of self-connection. And slowly, the fear that had once hovered over her like a shadow, the fear of doing it wrong, of looking silly, of being too old, faded. Because she wasn't painting a mask anymore. She was highlighting herself. Even skincare became a sacred ritual rather than a rushed routine. No longer bombarded by promises of 10 years younger overnight, she turned to products that prioritized health over illusion. She discovered ceramides, those lipids that help rebuild her skin barrier. She embraced vitamin C not as a cure, but as a gentle brightener. She started using SPF daily, not because she was scared of wrinkles, but because she respected her skin enough to protect it. Nightly, she used a soft, fragrance-free cleanser, followed by a layer of nourishing oil, not thick, not sticky, just enough to make her skin feel like silk under her palms. And when she looked in the mirror before bed, she no longer searched for flaws. She whispered gratitude. "Thank you," she'd murmur to her reflection, "for carrying me this far." In her growing community of elder women and even a few curious men, these changes spread like seeds in fertile soil. They exchanged not only product recommendations, but philosophies. One friend swore by calendula cream for her hands. Another taught everyone to mix a drop of lavender oil into their night lotion for calm. Someone brought in handmade tinted lip balms made with beeswax and beetroot, and they passed them around like sacred offerings. They weren't trying to be beautiful. They were being beauty itself, alive, aging, unapologetically present. And it wasn't long before the younger generations noticed. When Bahoa's granddaughter came to visit, she found her grandmother glowing in the garden, lips stained with berry tint, skin bare but vibrant, hair in a soft bun tied with a silk scarf. "You look peaceful," the girl said. "Not youthful, not trendy. Peaceful, the highest compliment there is. Because peace cannot be bought in a bottle. It is cultivated through choices that affirm rather than reject, soothe rather than scrape, include rather than exclude." This then is the heart of safe and suitable beauty in old age. It does not imitate, it understands. It does not shout over the wrinkles, it listens to them. It does not try to disguise time. It honors the journey it represents. The best products for the elderly are not those that promise to rewind the clock. They are those that say, let's enjoy the view from here. That say, you are still worthy of softness, of celebration, of care. Beauty for the elderly is not about correction. It is about comfort. It is about warmth in the fingertips, confidence in the ritual, ease in the process. It is the realization that skincare is not vanity, it is touch, often the only one some elders receive in days. It is a morning act of self-respect, a night ritual of calm. It is the return to self after years spent in service of others. And most importantly, it is a reminder, a gentle, glowing reminder that age has not dulled their right to feel good in their skin. Age has only changed the way that glow arrives. So if you're watching this and you felt left out, overwhelmed, or betrayed by the world of makeup and skincare, hear this now. There is a way back. There are products made for your skin, techniques that honor your hands, shades that cradle your tones, tools that fit your lifestyle, and more than that, there is a community growing, blooming, full of elders who are walking this path together, who are done with shame, who are done with silence, who are ready to say, this is what beauty looks like, not young, but real. You deserve beauty that fits you like a favorite sweater, soft, warm, worn in, comforting. You deserve tools that meet you where you are, not where the trend says you should be. You deserve to feel seen, not just in a crowd, but in your own mirror. And that begins not with glitter, but with gentle choices, with putting down what hurts and picking up what heals, with looking into your own eyes and saying, I will care for you, I will honor you, I will choose what suits me, not what sells. Because the most powerful kind of beauty is not the one that demands attention, it is the one that gives it to yourself, with patience, with pride, with peace. And so, after the shimmer fades and the marketing noise quiets down, what remains isn't the latest trend, it's the quiet revolution of choosing what truly supports you. Bahoa and countless others are redefining beauty, not through powders and pigments, but through peace, purpose, and products that feel like a warm embrace instead of a cold disguise. If you've ever looked in the mirror and felt unseen, this conversation is for you. We'd love to hear your story, your wins, your struggles, your favorite products that actually work for mature skin. Leave us a comment below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And subscribe if you believe beauty should always include you. Because here, aging isn't a problem to fix, it's a masterpiece to honor.